The American Medical Association said that the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is propaganda and religious exhortation. Yes, that is right. In the JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association, an article that was published in 1939. So the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous was published in April 10th of 1939, and this article is from October 14th, 1939. And the interesting thing here before we dive in and read this article actually is that in 1956, so a couple decades later, the American Medical Association did actually take in the AA propaganda and declared that alcoholism is a disease. But let's look at what they thought initially, which actually lines up with, I would say, what makes more actual like modern science sense today. So the article is called in the JMA, the JAMA Journal of American Medical Association. The article is called Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how more than 100 men have recovered from alcoholism. All right, so here's the actual article or blurb, whatever you want to call it. What's interesting is it says at the top here, Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how more than 100 men have recovered from alcoholism. Price $3.50. When I do a little Google look-see-loo about $3.50 in 1939, how much is that today? That is $82 in 2025 money. So the big book originally cost what's equivalent to $82 today. Obviously an expensive book. Here's what the article says. It says the seriousness of the psychiatric and social problem represented by addiction to alcohol is generally underestimated by those not intimately familiar with the tragedies in the families of victims or the resistance addicts offer to any effective treatment. Many psychiatrists regard addiction to alcohol as having a more pessimistic prognosis than schizophrenia. For many years, the public was beguiled into believing that short courses of enforced abstinence and catharsis in institutes and rest homes would do the trick. And now that the failure of such temporizing has become common knowledge, a considerable number of other forms of quack treatment have sprung up. The book under review, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the book under review is a curious combination of organizing propaganda and religious exhortation. It is in no sense a scientific book, although it is introduced by a letter from a physician. We know this is Dr. Silkworth, right? The doctor's opinion. It is introduced by a letter from a physician who claims to know some of the anonymous contributors who have been, quote, cured of addiction to alcohol and have joined together in an organization which would save other addicts by a kind of religious conversion. The book contains instructions as to how to intrigue. This is the recruitment, proselytizing, and evangelizing. The book contains instructions as to how to intrigue the alcoholic addict into the acceptance of divine guidance in place of alcohol in terms strongly reminiscent of Dale Carnegie and the adherence to Bookman's Oxford movement. Now, obviously, Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob got sober in the Oxford group for years, and they broke off Bill broke off from the Oxford group in 1937, and then in 1938, he started writing the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then it was published in 1939. Yes, it does come from the Oxford group. The one valid thing in this book, the one valid thing in this book is the recognition of the seriousness of addiction to alcohol. Other than this, the book has no scientific merit or interest. What I find so fascinating about this book review in the Journal of American Medical Association is that American Medical Association, a couple decades later, that decided that alcohol addiction is a disease, which is a theory, it's an idea, but eventually the indoctrination and the propaganda that they are saying that this book is, they're literally saying it's propaganda and religious conversion, that propaganda was so good and strong that it has become the dominant ideology of in the recovery world, is that AA is the way essentially, to the point where the very people who were saying it's propaganda later are saying that they agree with some of the ideas that are not validated or verified by scientific studies. There were no randomized studies in 1956 that verified that Alcoholics Anonymous was a valid treatment or had any effect at all when they made that statement that alcoholism is a disease. So there you have it. I'm very interested to hear what you think about this article. I was definitely intrigued by this article because it sounds accurate. This is like what I would say. Like if I was just going to read it objectively, not through the idea of how we're indoctrinated as a society by constantly seeing AA in TV shows, in movies, in the media, celebrities talking about how AA worked for them. Even if the same celebrities who say AA works are ones later who are not sober and lose their lives, right? So there's all this like propaganda that goes wide and far, and it's 100% in my experience, and just like in the reality of when I actually look at it objectively, it's 100% a religious conversion experience. AA is a cult religion. I know that that might sound intense, but here we have the JAMA saying that, yeah, it's a religious conversion program. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Share your thoughts below in the comments. Had you seen this before? What comes up for you when you think about Alcoholics Anonymous this way? Do you agree with this review in the American Medical Association in 1939, just a handful of months after the Big Book was first published? Let me know your thoughts. I look forward to hearing the conversation below. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.